Shri Rama Rama Rameti Rame Rame Manorame Sahasranama Tatulyam Ramanama Varanane. We delight in the beautiful name of Sri Ram. We do it again and again. For even if this name is once remembered, the name of Sri Ram bestows the fruit that is equal to 1,000 names of the all-pervading one, which we call Lord Vishnu. So we continue the story of Rama, the Ramayana, and just to recap a little bit where we are on this. So you'll recall that by now Hanuman is in the Ashoka garden, and he has discovered, to his delight, what can only be Sita. How has he discovered Sita? How does he recognize her? By a number of signs. And the signs are picked up from his own instinct, his own interpretation of who is Sita, but also from Rama's descriptions, and also by an alliance, if you like, with Rama's mind. You see, we have this peculiar idea that we have our own minds, and that's not true. When you analyze it properly, you'll see there's only one cosmic mind. And if you understand this, then you have a key. And the key, in practical terms, is called the game of life. There's a book, Game of Life and How to Play It, by a wonderful author, Florence Scovel-Shinn, and I always recommend it to people who want some practical way of delivering what you want in life. And it's better to do it for the good of all, including yourself. And it's the key to a person who has the generosity of spirit enough to bless everyone without any selfish motive, with a certain faith to say, all things will be well. It was St. Julian Norwich who made that famous statement, all things will be well, all things shall be well, and all things shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well. You couldn't get more positive than that. It's not just a wishful thinking process. It's an assertion that can be no other thing. So even if somebody seems to be your enemy and is throwing arrows at you, and we find plenty of that in the Ramayana, then there's a way of thinking which says these arrows are progressions, particle progressions of divine grace flowing toward you. They're simply like golden flowers, because everything can be registered to the divine account. Once we know that, then cosmic mind transforms everything for us into how we think. We are molding our own destiny. So when we talk about the story of Rama, we're talking about life. You may think that it happened 7,000 years ago, historically, that may be. But you'll see, you recognize the events in your own life. That life is not smooth. Life is full of ebbs and flows. Life is full of ups and downs. And it's not a cruel joke on you. It's just the nature of life itself. And what will we learn from it? How to deal with it. We're fully equipped to deal with it. Hanuman was fully equipped to jump the ocean. He had obstacles in the way, as we learned last week. What will we do with these obstacles? We'll get around them in some way or another, with a supreme confidence and faith. And once that faith is stirred in Anjaneya or Hanuman, then immediately he's able to do the unthinkable and cross any amount of obstacles. This is the same with everyone. But it's that faith that we have to develop. And when we develop that faith, we get away from our sense of smallness and individuality, and we become large-minded, and our heart becomes enlarged. And so, as I mentioned last week, that very moment when that faith is stirred, it is Hanuman who becomes the hero of the story. So anyway, we see that in the Ashoka garden or forest of delight, there was one important place that remained unexplored, if you remember, and the son of the wind, Maruti, Hanuman, Anjaneya, he scales the compound and he gets into this walled garden with great ease. If we want to breach anything and get any worthwhile thing, then we have to be subtle. In other words, the ego has to be subtle, and truth is very subtle. Now, as the name of the garden is suggesting, the garden was really the dispeller of distress. And that's inserted in the story, not only factually, but also symbolically. It's a garden of distress. If you think of it in a certain way, we are living in a garden which seems delightful, but it's a garden of sorrow. Now, that's not delivered to make you feel negative, because within it is the possibility, infinite possibility, of making it good. In other words, changing the emotional mood that we have and seeing the garden itself, which is beautiful. Anyway, while the palace was the artificial seat of sense pleasure, this particular garden is the natural inspirer of pleasure, sensual to the sensuous and spiritual to the austere. We can look at the same thing and interpret it in two different ways. And the beauty and the bounty of nature were both concentrated here in this garden, we know this, something like a Garden of Eden or a paradise. And the treasures of earth, they were lavishly spent to decorate this naturally charming place. Some of the most naturally charming scenes in nature are things which we call natural, in other words, with minimum interference. Now, of course, there are specific culturally developed gardens which have their own beauty because the human art and creativity and intelligence has gone into creating them. Hedges that are all even, for example, and flower gardens, flower beds, if you will, that are systematically planted, and the overall picture is delightful, and you put some fountains there also. We can create that, no doubt. But there's also a beauty in nature, nature's own natural productions. So the flowering, the fruiting trees of all seasons, they were actually cultured there in amidst nature's own design. And it was, of course, the haven. Naturally, if you have such a scene, you can hear birds in joyful song everywhere, and also bees and other animals. Now, if Sita was alive, she was bound to resort to this place, because that's her nature, and either to delight or to decline in sorrow because of her partiality for woods. And it reminds me that next month, around about this time, the 23rd, 24th, 25th, we have a retreat. In other words, we have an opportunity to withdraw into natural surroundings. Natural surroundings, probably about 500, acres of land is available. And we don't give these retreats often, but it's an opportunity to stir up the inner spiritual sense, which will last, no doubt, for some time, and will last always in your memory. But in these circumstances, in these environments, we have the opportunity to go and resort to these places in order to connect with our own spiritual essence. And so naturally, this is where Sita is. And Hanuman thinks that, in his search for a place of personal concealment on the branch of tall trees, just to recap what we studied last week. And no sooner had he secured enough, cover, enough foliage in front of him and camouflage, he saw the arresting scene that we described last week. On a platform, he saw seated a slim woman who was plunged in sorrow. And strangely enough, that sorrow wasn't earthly or earthy. It wasn't to do with, the earthly pains of bereavement or anything like that. Bereavement, of course, in the sense of self-interest or self-pity. It was an ethereal languor, adding to the luster in her beauty, despite the fact that she obviously had not changed her clothes. She obviously was unwashed. Her hair had not been attended to still, and she was very thin emaciated to some extent, because she hadn't eaten, she was fasting. And still there was this exquisite beauty about her, which first attracts Ravana, of course. Anyway, it was given to the spiritual genius of Hanuman to see into this divine halo. His purity managed to penetrate the divine aura, if you will, around her. And then he looks carefully, and he sees the jewels that were described by Rama, and he sees them hanging, fastened to a branch, not being worn. And he sees the yellow cloth worn by her is extremely dirty because of no change and wash. So these are clues. This is your identity, but mainly the ethereal beauty that surrounds her. And he sees that there's a single plait of hair hanging up to the waist, and it hadn't received any attendance or washing. And the body, of course, was haggard, says Valmiki, due to her fasting, due to her sleeplessness. And so in spite of all of these odds, it was the picture, the vision of a young woman of heavenly beauty who was sat there absorbed in the very plainful thought of her beloved Rama. Don't forget, of course, Rama is representing the Supreme Person, the Divine, the avatar of Vishnu, as we mentioned in our prayer even, or inferred. And so, when our individual soul, as it were, becomes so united with Rama, it becomes a little painful when there's any sense of separation, or what mystics call the dark night of the soul. The great mystic Ramakrishna Paramahansa went through this also, having received a vision of Mother Kali. He then was pained to see, well, I saw you once, can it be a continuous thing, please? Can I see this all the time and every day? Of course it was granted to him. And he recognizes anyway, Hanuman, that this indeed is Sita. And the thought flashed in his mind, just this must be Sita. Mentally, he pays his homage to Rama, the worthy spouse of this spiritual beauty. And so this is really more or less where we are in the story. Her great eyes were full of disbelief when he reveals himself to her, but this revelation we'll describe. Now, Hanuman says to himself, okay, somehow I have to connect with Sita, and how will I do it? I can see the scarf she wears, though it's soiled and crumpled, is the companion of the one that was found in the forest. Don't forget, Sita had dropped it. And surely, he thought, this sublimely beautiful lady, who seems like one steadfast in true love, in a tempest-tossed sea of troubles, is Rama's beloved queen. For all of us, our minds have to be fixed as much as possible. And the fixation, in other words, the recipe to fixation is love, pure undying, pure unconditional love. Now, it's for her, of course, that Rama is consumed by a threefold agony, suffering and wrath for the insult to her, that's also in him. And he's also heartbroken by the pangs of separation. And surely he is ever in her heart, and she is in his. And in truth, they're not parted. Physically, they're parted, but in truth, deep down, they cannot be parted. They're two sides of the same coin. Wherever there's Rama, there's Sita. Wherever there's Sita, there's Rama. Anyway, as Hanuman continues to see her, his heart leaps back across the ocean and seeks Rama's feet in adoration. And again, he looks at Sita and says to himself, see, it was for the sake of this divine lady that the mighty Vali, the peer of Ravana in prowess, was slain. And it was for her that Kabanda and Virad met their death. And 14,000 fierce demons, Rakshasas, with Kara, Dushana, and Trisiras, crimsoned with their gore, the glades of the forest of the Janasthana. It was her, he recalls, or for her, that the splendid sovereignty of the Vanaras was wrested from the heroic Vali and given to Sugriva. And it is to do her service that I crossed the sea, the lord of the rivers, and I'm now here in Lanka. And all this seems much, but truly, if for her sake Rama should transform or even destroy the universe, I would say, from my inner soul, my depths, it's well done so far. She is worth it all and more. Now, it gives us the opportunity to take the lesson. If we review, and the older you get, the greater the opportunity to do it, you can look in your past and identify milestones. At the time, they may not have been pleasant, but you'll see them as divine gateways for a kind of evolutionary movement of divine grace to flow through. If it wasn't for this, it must be that, a series of causal connections that we can make. And we see how everything is actually divinely arranged. And that is the purpose of reviewing past events, with the idea of saying, oh, I see, the divine hand is in these things. What a glory. So again, Hanuman's heart, his heart crosses the sea back and dwells on Rama far away. And just then, as you see, it's not that he thinks, his feeling is also there. And just then, as off the clear surface of a lake, a swan might glide, so in the blue sky the moon swam into sight and shone brightly, as if on purpose to help the son of Vayu. All of these started appearing and peering between the leaves, not knowing what to do at this point in time. Hanuman takes another look at the face of Sita and dwells on it for a while. A face that disclosed a sea of care, like a heavenly laden ship caught in a storm. And for the time being, he just has to sit and wonder at the beauty. And he knows the danger because she's guarded by the Rakshasas, his soldiers. And they were not just soldiers, but they were actually intolerably ugly. You know, one had only one eye, another only one ear. Now, we're not saying that all people with physical disabilities are Rakshasas or anything like that, but what we're saying is that thought manifests itself in the physical. And some of them were without ears and some without noses, and some had noses turned steeply upward, some were bald, while some had done their hair in grotesque styles, and some had pendant stomachs, and some had camel's lips, and some were hunchbacks, and some were dwarfs, and some tall were like palmyra trees, and some were swine-faced, and some were tiger-faced, and some were buffalo-faced, and goat-faced, and all these were seen. And these are unsightly creatures were holding spears and other weapons in their hands. Now, it's not against political correctness to describe these beings in this way. It is simply that their thought manifests in this way. You can, of course, see many people who are outwardly not beautiful at all, but inwardly they are, and it reflects through their eyes and through their face and their facial expressions and so on. But the purport of all of these descriptions is that our behavior is reflected in these things, and I have to note, is reflected in diseases. Every thought carries with it a condensed message in your life. Supposing you have some kind of difficulty in your life, then by changing your thought pattern, you will find the appropriate way around it. The confidence that every problem has a corresponding solution. We take it as a divine law of nature. And so the minute we indulge in self-pity or anger or any of these negative emotions or doubt or fear, then the body takes this on. There was a wonderful person, Louise Hay, who picks up, and I mentioned the author, Florence Scovel-Shinn. Florence was the inspiration for Louise Hay, who wrote comprehensive books on matching symptoms, physical symptoms, to emotional causes. As soon as we bring out emotions, they reflect in the human body. And they correspond well to the content and the quality of the thought. In the same way, when we change our thinking and make it strong and delightful, pure and free and true, then that's what's reflected in the physical, and the extension of the physical called our environment. Now, anyway, in the midst of all these was the pale-faced Princess Sita. She sat trembling, befriended only by her virtue. You must understand her uncertainty about what's going to happen, and we can understand her pining also for Rama. We can understand her loneliness and her uncertainty. What will happen to me? All of these naturally, from a human point of view, will creep in. But it's only a temporary state. And her only friend is virtue itself, like an unsupported, beautiful creeper fallen on the ground. Now, it was still dark, and it wasn't yet dawn. We can picture the scene. And Ravana was roused from his slumber by the chanting of the Vedas, peculiar enough, and the morning songs of the court bards, or poets, or songsters, chanters. And the moment he woke up, he thought of Sita because of his obsession with her. And he starts towards this park where she was kept. And Hanuman is witnessing this now. And he comes not alone, he comes with all his retinue, and he enters this palace park, accompanied by scented torches and the royal umbrella, surrounded by maidens, covered all over with brilliant ornaments, and clad in spotless white clothes. And he appears charming, like another Manmata. And as the procession enters the gate, then Hanuman hears the noise of the crowd and the tinkling of women's anklets, and soon he sees the Rakshasa king approaching. Well, at once, Hanuman hides himself with thick leaves and so on, so nobody can see him. And of course, he has this vantage point in the tree. And as Ravana comes towards Sita, his strength and splendor are actually wonderful to behold. And at this sight, Sita's body shrinks and trembles like a plantain tree in a storm. If you want to impress in the ancient days, even now, if you want to impress or the potency of your nation, your country, then make sure that the leader is decked out in the finest clothing, in the most glorious palaces and so on. I think it was King Henry VIII in England who outstripped any other king simply with the idea of impressing his potency, impressing people with his potency. And so Ravana comes towards Sita, and his strength and splendor are wonderful. And so we see how Sita's reaction is. Anyway, we should always, when we listen to this, we should always try to form a mental image of Sita in her present state. And we can only imagine the agony of despair of any good person or any good woman who has, by misfortune, fallen into the power of a lustful man. And we see today stories of enslaved women throughout the world in places, North Korea was the latest report and so on. And so what must be the state of Sita is something worth reflecting on. She's the daughter of Janaka, just to remind you, so somebody of importance and dignity, brought up in this way, in a virtuous family. She's the wife of Ramachandra, and she is in this predicament. And to appreciate Valmiki's metaphors in the story and his similes in this context, we should use this as a kind of meditation which purifies our heart and fire the heart with holiness, piety, purity. Valmiki provides us with these scenes in order to mobilize our heart, not to make us depressed, but to give us empathy. And when we have empathy for Sita, chances are we have empathy for every person in this predicament. One of the great tragedies of human civilization has been that women throughout Africa, Asia, actually throughout the world, have been classed in a second-hand way, deprived of education and deprived of circumstances, made to work hard. So every woman now is subject to our evoked emotions at this point. Anyway, one feels unequal to rendering all these things into any other language except beautiful similes, and Valmiki illustrates her condition. Only a few of these examples are cited by us, but we fill in the rest with our imagination. Anyway, Ravana approaches Sita, still hoping to obtain her consent. Sita was covered. He knows that if he doesn't have the consent, then it seems pointless and worthless. And Sita is covered with dust. She has no jewels, and she shines as if wearing the jewels that any princess must wear. And she looks like something like a beautiful tree fell down and lying low, says Valmiki. Her face is covered by light and shadow, like a lotus flower stained by mud. And she sways like a cobra bound by charms. And her state is like one surrounded by raging fires on all sides. An army lost its chief warriors, isn't another simile that Valmiki provides, or like a river that has run dry, or like a vessel for sacrificial fire that suffers desecration and is no longer useful, or like a lovely lotus tank destroyed by elephants trampling through them, or like a flowering creeper uprooted and cast aside. Valmiki gives us all these examples, or like a cow, or a cow elephant, we should say, that is separated from its leader of the herd and is captured and tied as a prisoner, and the herd don't know about it, and they're looking everywhere. And so Sita sits trembling, overwhelmed with grief and fear, and when she perceives Ravana's approach, that very instant her heart travels to Rama, like a chariot drawn by swift steeds. And with a faded face and a wasted form, she thinks of her protectors who are actually far away, and she wonders, do they know where I am? Have they started looking for me? How will they know where I am? How will they must be worried out of their minds. And she wonders, when will they come? Will they ever come? And she asks herself and she meditates on the divine. And as she's doing this, Ravana approaches and speaks to her. And then, of course, Hanuman, hidden in the branches of the tree, watches to all the events below him. And to Sita, who's plunged in a sea of sorrow and clinging to dharma, that is balance, clinging to dharma, what is right, what is good, what is pure, she clings to this and to the thought of her Lord, who is also like this, pure and unsullied and loving. And Ravana then starts speaking. He addresses her by her physical beauty. He says, beautiful one, why do you shrink away from me? Don't you see how much I care for you? And he's now, starting to lay on all the charm that he possibly can. And he says, though it's lawful for a Rakshasa to take another person's wife, this is our lifestyle, this is our habit, this is what we do all the time, and we are entitled to ravage her, to take her, to steal her, to possess her by force. He says, even so we're entitled to it, I'm not doing it, because I'm a beggar for your love. And there's no need to fear me. I shall never touch you till your heart turns toward me. So don't be afraid. My one wish, he says, is that you should care for me as I do for you. You must accept me with affection. Why do you make your body a prey to unavailing sorrow? I just submit, return my love or my affection. And again he addresses a beautiful one. There's no one like you in loveliness. No, none in the world. And it's not right for you to reject beautiful jewels that I'm offering you and all these clothes. Look at your condition. It's not right that you should be sleeping on the ground and that you should leave your hair unkempt. And so don't waste your youth. And now you've come under my protection. You should lack for nothing. I'll look after you in every possible way, every pleasure that you want. You can select whatever you like, you can select. See, I have all of this here. You take your pick. He's thinking, of course, that Sita is tempted like any other mortal person. You know, supposing you win the lottery or something like that, and you ask yourself, what will you spend it on? Now, I don't know the euro millions, maybe it's several 100,000 millions or 700 millions, I don't know, whatever it is. You ask a so-called normal person, what will you spend it on? They may list a number of things. The last thing might be, I'll give some to charity. Well, what will you do with the rest? These temptations are there. The whole dialogue in the Upanishads, the Katha Upanishad, with Yama and Nachiketa is saying the same thing. I can give you anything you like. And it's the same with us. This universe is a storehouse of abundance. We can get whatever we like. But unless we have a purity of mind, we will squander any of these resources in a selfish way. So he's offering her everything he can think of to try and win her over. And then he says, I can't take my eyes away from your face, which is bright. It's like the full moon. He's a sweet talker, there's no doubt. And wherever on your body I set my eyes, then my eyes remain fixed, immovable. I can't take my eyes away from you. Why should somebody with so much beauty suffer so much sorrow? I can't understand it. So please accept me and enjoy all the pleasures of the world. I'll conquer the world and I'll give it to Janaka for your sake, your father. What will I not do for you? I'll do everything. I'll move heaven and earth for you. You'll be my sovereign consort over and above anybody else. And all the queens and women in the palace, they'll be ruled by you. My wealth, my kingdom, all of these, you can enjoy them all. And the country, Lanka, and myself, and why the whole earth, that'll belong to you. Are you not attracted by my offer? My strength, my courage, they're all known to the very devas themselves. And the ashuras also. And they vanquished by me, they themselves bow their heads to me. I'm the Lord of the universe. And with jewels and garments fit for you by my own handmaidens, they'll decorate you, they'll adorn you, they'll comb your hair. So I long to see you splendidly decked, and you'll be free to give away generous gifts in charity, if that's what you want also. Your authority will extend over all mankind, and my subjects and my relatives, they'll deem it a joy to serve you. Now, with all these temptations in the way, what person will not submit? Anyway, he goes on. Why do you waste your thoughts on wretched Rama, wandering in the forest? What will he offer you? How can you love? How can you trust somebody who has been deprived of his rights and driven out of his kingdom? He's basically a loser. He's roaming about clad in bark garments, although no royal array is there. Look here how I'm dressed. Look how he's dressed. What can this helpless fellow do? See, the goddess of wealth, she that presides over power, and she who rules over success, have all abandoned this Rama. And you know it. And it's even doubtful whether he's alive today. Anyhow, you may take it. He will never set eyes on you again, ever. Much less come near you. If you're pining for him, it's useless. And like Garuda seizing a serpent, you have captured my heart. I am unable to escape. Even in your present state, devoid of jewels or good clothes, you have drawn me away from all my other wives. So what can I do now? In my apartments, there are many, many innumerable lovely women. He's boasting a little. But after seeing you, I cannot bear the sight of any of them. You will be queen over all of these. You'll receive their humble service. Now, this is quite a sales pitch. And then he goes on. He hasn't finished. In what sense can Rama equal me? Don't you see that in severe austerities that he's gone through, in strength, wealth, and glory, in every way, I'm superior to him? You see, don't think that Ravana, as a Rakshasa, has not done severe austerities. Austerity and meditation is not the key to purity. It is the key, no doubt, to power. Since we have the capacity to mobilize thought from mind, Brahma, all his boons are from Brahma, cosmic mind. And so he has earned, no doubt, what he has. But what use are they if he has no purity of intention or heart? He will squander it. And also not only that, but the key enemies of lust and greed and anger and doubt, well, not so much doubt, but fear, certainly, all of these beset him. And principally this greed for more and more and more. So he's making this case, and he's saying, shake off your fear. We shall wander over the whole world and be happy in each other's company. He's underestimated Sita, in short. And with me, he says, you'll enjoy limitless wealth and pleasure, and life will be one continuous joy. Oh, beautiful one, have pity on me. Let us sport together in the parks and groves by the sea. Only say yes. Now we know, historically, that anybody who thinks they'll get happiness by this means will suffer sorrow at some point in their life. Physically, psychologically, and all of us being subject to mortality. So this is a false sales pitch that we ourselves often give to ourselves. And when we want to reform the mind, it's a question of engaging in a dialogue, observing a certain monologue that the mind is giving you, just like Ravana, and then not countering it will be a problem. We counter it with a counter-argument, which ultimately wins. Many saints have used this technique of addressing, oh, my mind. Anyway, Ravana, he's uttered his impassioned appeal for love and pity and all of these things. And when he's finished speaking, Sita picks a blade of grass, and she places it between him and her, and laughs actually in derision. Now, how can you scorn somebody like this? But she does it. And she gently speaks. Well, Ravana, Lay aside all your vain thoughts concerning me. It's not going to work. It's altogether improper for you to desire me. Why don't you turn your heart to all your other wives? Never can I agree to what you say. Think of the family I was born in, the royalty. Think of the family I was married into. How can you ever hope to persuade me? Don't give room for such foolish and impossible desires and make sorrow for yourself. Every desire is essentially mainly foolish unless it's a desire for noble thoughts or purity of mind or fixing one's mind and attention on the Supreme. Anyway, she turns her face away and she continues. She says, how can I become your wife when I'm the wife of another person? Don't violate Dharma. Dharma, we understand the full implications of it. The law of nature is Dharma. Don't tread the path of sin. Listen to me. Think how carefully you watch over your wives to keep them safe from the touch of others. You don't want anybody to snatch them. So other husbands, they do the same to their wives. They protect their wives. And remember, other men are just like you. So don't cast your eyes on another person's wife. Be happy with your own in the way of true happiness. But if you allow your mind to dwell on another person's wife, another man's wife, then sorrow and dishonor, that will be your lot. It's not an honorable thing to do. Think about it. Your passion is overwhelming your reasoning. So is there none else in the world to advise you correctly? Don't you have some wise counselor somewhere? Why do you do evil and bring destruction on yourself and on your people now? She's telling him, if you now reason things out, what you'll discover is this passion is bringing destruction on you and all your people, who largely, as we have seen, are probably innocent. And when a king loses self-control, because that's what it's about, when the king of the mind also loses self-control, then his kingdom and wealth will all be destroyed. It's a self-destructive path. So be sure that this country, this Lanka, and its great wealth will be utterly destroyed if you persist in your sin, and the enemies whom you have conquered and humiliated, they'll start rejoicing, Ravana is destroyed. So I've no use for your wealth, I've no use for your pleasures, I've no use for your promise, and they don't tempt me in the least, because I have married Rama, and I can't take my mind and heart away from him. And I who held his hand can never touch another, never. Now this forms a beautiful model formula for all people in a marriage and all people who are partners in this way. Anyway, she continues, I am his, the prince's entirely and forever. I belong to him. And as the Veda belongs to one who has reverently mastered it, it's not right for anyone else to look on me with longing eyes. So listen to me who speaks for your own good. Please beg Rama humbly for forgiveness and escape from his anger, because don't go in search of your own ruin. Rama is generous, and he'll surely forgive you if you seek his mercy. So go, seek his forgiveness, beg for his forgiveness and for his protection. Don't seek death and destruction. This is what you're doing currently. You don't know it. Passion has obscured your reasoning and your vision, your level-headedness. So there I hear even now the twang of Rama's bow. You can't escape. Yama stands very near, ready to carry you away. Now she's saying this in the midst of no evidence that Rama is coming. But her faith in goodness and truth and perfection that will flow as divine grace and will sweep away all the difficulties and problems, and ultimately truth alone will triumph. So there she says, I hear even now this Rama's bow, and the arrows of Rama and Lakshmana, they'll soon be here in Lanka, and your city will be in flames. Didn't Rama utterly destroy the Rakshasas at Janasthana? Have you forgotten that? Knowing his strength, you come like a thief to our hut in the forest, and when Rama and Lakshmana were away, you came to steal me. Can you for a moment stand before them, these two beings, face to face? Can a dog approach a tiger? Will it not run away from the very scent? And as the sun sucks up moisture from the wet earth, Rama and Lakshmana will drink your life. Will you run to hide yourself among the mountains? Will you try to escape under the sea? Even then, as at the appointed hour the tree is struck by lightning, so you'll perish at their hands. You can't escape. And so, in this way, Sita ends with a stern warning. Ravana controls, as much as he possibly can, this affront. You can see him shaking a little bit, not out of fear, but out of anger. And we know that anger is evoked through thwarted desire. And so he says again, he speaks, O Sita, doting on the spurious ascetic Rama, you talk like a fool, and you repay my loving words with insult. Because of my love, I would kill you. You'd be dead by now. And of the time I had allowed you, 2 months more remain. So change your mind before they pass. Be my wife and come to my bed. And if you refuse, then you'll be sent to my kitchen and cooked for my meal. Beware, love is very short. First of all, he's trying to persuade her, I love you, and so of all my wives. But now she's refusing him. Then he's ready to put her in the pot and eat her. Imagine. So it was well known that the food, of course, of the Rakshasas included human flesh. They must have been cannibals. And so hence this threat. And we know that historically, culturally, everywhere, cannibalism is a way of asserting your dominance over your enemy. I've now taken you, I've eaten your heart, your liver, everything. See? So I've actually conquered you in every possible way. And also somehow nourished myself. So anyway, Sita is not afraid. And she answers, what a pity, what a pity. Is there none to give you good advice? She's still saying, is there nobody who can stabilize your way of thinking? Have you no friend to save you from the sin and put you on the path of virtue? You see the compassion she has for him, despite the threats. You can't escape Rama's punishment. And so like a rabbit agonizing, or antagonizing, I should say, some big creature like a wild elephant, you've incurred the wrath of Rama. And so you're in a wretched condition now. Yeah, I've seen you for what you are, a petty creature, despite the evidence of your grandeur, and you've stolen me in his absence. You're basically a common thief. Despite everything, you're no better than a thief. But a thief who has stolen something more precious than you can think of. So aren't you even the least ashamed, she says? See, if your destruction is certain, I'm not just threatening it. It's just part of the natural law. Your evil fate has driven you to this act. And yet, you're the brother of Kubera. You are famous as a warrior. You're the master of a complete four-limbed army. Why should you do this mean deed in this way? In this same way, we are equipped, fully equipped. But if we misuse it, it's our misfortune. It's our own destruction. Anyway, Ravana's eyes roll in anger. And he looks fiercely now at Sita and hisses like a snake. See, his mood changes. All his words are worthless. You're precious, you'll be the queen, you'll be my wife, I desire you, I'll wait for your consent. All of this somehow just goes away instantly. And seeing his mounting anger, wonder if his young wives, Danya, Mali, walks up to his side and embraces him and says, King, why do you vex yourself over this mean human creature? Now jealousy comes up. She doesn't seem to care for you. You must have noticed. She has not the good fortune to be your wife. And that's all. So, and what is there so attractive about her anyway? I'm much more attractive. Look, she's pale, she's fasted, she hasn't washed. Why do you waste your thoughts on this puny creature? Come away, let's enjoy ourselves. And she draws him away with affectionately, and the Rakshasa goes away with her laughing. You see how we can easily be persuaded to change our mood through temptation. Before he goes, Ravana orders the Rakshasas who guard Sita to bring her round somehow. You persuade her, I can't persuade her, you try and persuade her. And with resounding steps, he leaves this Ashoka park, followed by all his retinue. And as soon as he turns his back, the Rakshasas surround Sita. Now the princess, who's been bold and brave and courageous and put on a strong front up till now, she now sees the danger. She trembles, and she looks at these ugly creatures that begin speaking to her. And they start saying, when Ravana, a scion of a noble family, a world-famous warrior, desires you, then how can you refuse him, you foolish girl? Who do you think Ravana is? So you should know that he is the direct descendant of Brahma. We all are, actually. He is the grandson of Pulastya Prajapati, son of Brahma. He's a great hero. He's won so many battles and vanquished so many foes. How foolish to slight him. So don't let your own pride ruin you. Accept his offer and make peace. And Ravana is the son of Rishi Vishravas. Don't think he is a nobody. So accept him and be happy. Now we easily see that what they're doing is they're recognizing the egoistic side of Ravana. And in the same way, when we bolster our own egoistic tendencies, then we become self-important in a very unwarranted way. And then they go on marketing him, the king of the Rakshasas who defeated in battle and put to flight even the deities in heaven. He's inviting you to be his wife. And each one is saying this in turn. You must yield, Pogo, or you must die. So there's now, if we can't persuade you, well, here's your alternative, the threat. It's a fact that very often when people don't get their own way, they then resort to threats. And these are self-destructive. And then they say, slighting all his other wives. That's what he's prepared to do. And Ravana wants you and promises to make you the chief among the queens, forsaking all his noble wives. And it's clear that our master, the king, is bewitched by your beauty. He's begging. We've never seen him beg. He's begging for your life and offers to make you first among his consorts. So why are you foolishly obstinate? No one in the world can equal Lord Ravana. Good fortune comes seeking you, and you are spurning it, turning it down. You're just a complete fool. We've never come across anybody so foolish. The sun and the wind gods are afraid of this Rakshasa king. And he comes looking, seeking you. He wants to make you his favorite wife. So don't let your pride betray you. They're attributing it falsely to her pride. It's a kind of, in a way, it's a kind of projection. Not realizing her virtue. Don't reject the fortune that comes to you unsought. You see, the test of a steady and pure mind is no, absolutely no vestige of temptation will disturb it. So, another one, because they're taking it turns, she concludes, so now we've given you good advice, we've done our best, and we leave the rest up to you. You ponder on it, please. And if you reject this offer, comes the threat, you see. You must surely die. There's a very famous quotation attributed to many different people, some attributed to Socrates, some attributed to Christian martyrs. You can kill me, but you can never harm me. I think it's a wonderful statement. So now we come then on to the further elaboration of this, because the boldest and strongest minded woman may, if kept in captivity for a long period, they may lose heart and become depressed. In this sense, we are all, in a sense, captives. I say in a sense because that's our interpretation. We're actually full and free and perfect, but we interpret our life as we're in captivity. There's a wonderful book by Reynold Johnson, a great scientist, called The Imprisoned Splendor. We assume that we are imprisoned, but falsely so. And so anybody who feels that they are somehow imprisoned in impossible restricted circumstances, almost impossible to get out of, will naturally lose heart and become depressed in mood. But Sita hoped month after month that her Lord would discover her whereabouts and come to rescue her. This is her one hope, her one faith. And in this same way, it is faith that destroys depression. Sick with disappointed hope, alone in the midst of enemies, she clings to life only because of this abiding faith in the love of Rama, which makes her feel that he would safely come. And here comes another dictum, if you will. Love conquers everything. Cultivation of love outshines and out-saturates everything. Anyway, the Rakshasas, they plied her with what, from their point of view, and when she refers to well-meant counsel for Ravana, it's a completely different thing that he's talking about. He says, won't you listen to our advice? Or they say, you're human, so lack sense. There's their so-called sensible advice, and you still hold on to this wretched man, Rama, this husband of yours. You don't see any men offering you all these things. So your proper place is our king's bedchamber, and that is the place for every kind of pleasure. But spurning his offer, you're forever thinking of your worthless husband. Why are you still fond of this luckless wretch driven out of his kingdom? You'll never see him again. So why don't you yield to Ravana and be happy? Now, of course, there's no guarantee of faithfulness here, because Ravana, the trouble with desire is when the desire goes, another desire replaces it and surfaces. Anyway, Sita, hearing these words, could only do one thing. She could only shed tears. What sinful words you utter, she says. Never can I do what you say. You tell me that Ram is poor and wretched and exiled from his home. All this I know. But among us of the race of men, no wife would think of giving up her husband on such small grounds. It's wicked for the Rakshasa king to desire me for his wife. And as the sun's brightness belongs inseparably to the sun, so do I belong to Ram. As Sachi is faithful to Indra or Arundhati to Vashishta, so am I ever faithful to Rama. And again, in this modern context, desiring another person's wife, certainly in most traditions, including the Judeo-Christian tradition, is the greatest sin. There's a story of David who meets his destruction because of this, because of his attraction toward a woman, and he sends her husband away in the battlefield with sure death. Anyway, the Rakshasas gave up all hopes of persuading her. They've exhausted all their arguments, and they then, amongst each other, are of the opinion that they can't do anything more with a stubborn fool like this. It's much better to eat her before she gets too thin with brooding. They're also lusting after her, but in a different way. Not to meet with their pleasure that belongs to their king, no, but their stomachs. And the desire for food or to be satisfied in excess is called greed. When we are so attracted that food is the most basic. And in the yogic concept, the nose as an instrument, or the instrument of smell, the capacity to smell, is inevitably linked with the lowest instinct called Muladhara. And so we'll continue this story next Saturday, God willing. And so we'll leave it at that for today. I'll mark the page here. Thank you. And so Om Shanti Shanti Shanti, Jai Jai, Shri Ramachandra Ki Jai. Good.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you.
Thank you, Swami.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you.